What you guys, got another video here for you on how to run any OS on Windows 11 without installing any software. So for this video we'll be using Ubuntu, but you can use any other operating system that you want to use to install on Windows 11. We're going to be using HyperV to install Ubuntu onto whilst leaving Windows 11 intact. This is called a virtual machine, and we'll be using that to install our operating systems. You can install more than one operating system at any one time on HyperV. So to get it working, all you need to do here is type feature in the search box and open up the turn Windows features on or off. Inside the features box here, what you need to do is look for HyperV, and you need to turn this on by putting the check mark in HyperV, then clicking OK, and this will go ahead and get this prepared. You will need to restart your system, but once that's done, it should work. Now, if it doesn't work, then you need to check your BIOS to make sure you've got the virtualization enabled in your BIOS, and you should be then good to go. Also, you want to make sure that your system is capable of running virtualization. Most systems nowadays are, but if you have got all this enabled, you should now see HyperV Manager once you restart your system. So once HyperV Manager is open, up on the top left hand side you should see your computer here, and this is where we can now install a virtual machine. We can right click on here and add a new virtual machine, hard disk or floppy disk, or we can go over to the right hand side and click on new and do the same thing there. So I'm going to right click and go virtual machine, and this will add a new virtual machine. You should see the new virtual machine wizard pop up. You can give the virtual machine a name. In this case, I'm going to give mine Ubuntu, but if you're using another OS, you can use whatever OS name you want on your particular installation. So now we need a place to store our virtual machine, and this will be a location where you choose, whether it will be on the same drive as Windows or whether you want to put it on another drive. I've got another drive here, so I'm going to put it on there, and I'm going to call the folder Ubuntu and stick it inside that folder there. So that bit's now done, and what we're going to do next is go to the next button, and we should now see generation 1 or generation 2. Just read the information here for generation 1 and generation 2 and choose the option that suits your needs. So I'm going to go for generation 1 here because this supports 32-bit and 64-bit guest operating systems for this computer. So that's what I'm going to go for here. Click next. Okay, so now we need to assign some memory. This will come down to how much memory you have on your system. If you only have 8 gigabytes of RAM, then obviously you can't give it 8 gigabytes because you'll have no RAM left. So you need to only probably give it 4,000. If you've got 16, you might be able to give it a bit more. I'm just going to give it 4,000 here. And I'm going to use the use dynamic memory for this virtual machine, which it will expand when it needs more memory. And now we can choose our network connection that we want. So I'm going to go for default switch here, and then we can go to the next button down here. So let's go next. Here is create a virtual disk, but you can also use an existing virtual hard disk if you have one, or attach a virtual hard disk later on. Depends on how you're setting yours up. I'm going to use the create a virtual disk, and I'm going to give this 30 gigabytes for Ubuntu, and depending on the space on your drive, but you shouldn't go too low because it won't work when you go to install it. So now we're going to install the operating system from a boot drive. We need to boot obviously to our Ubuntu disk here. So I'm going to choose this option for our ISO, and then we can go next, and we can click on finish to finish our configurations. So in the virtual machine list now, we should see Ubuntu and the state is off, which means it hasn't been started yet. Down the bottom right, you should see Ubuntu. Click on the settings here, and this is where you can configure all of your settings for your virtual machine. I'm going to give it an extra process here and click OK and leave the rest as is. So what we're going to do next is go to connect and connect to our virtual machine here. So you should see the virtual machine is turned off, so click start, and this will start up our virtual machine. It's then going to boot from our ISO that we've set it to, and this will then load up Ubuntu. So you should see a bunch of text coming up on the screen here. Don't worry about that. That's pretty normal. So we're just going to let this load up. You should now see Ubuntu or whatever operating system that you've chose to install on your system. So I'm going to let this load up here. and be patient. It does take a bit of time. When it loads, you should see something looking like this. We need to change the language to English, and then we can click on Install Ubuntu. So we're going to install Ubuntu here and let this load up. So we should now see keyboard layout. I'm going to choose the keyboard layout for myself, which is English, and we're going to go continue. We should now see the radio button in normal installation. I'm going to leave the check mark in download updates while installing Ubuntu, and I'm going to put the check mark install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware and additional media formats. Now we can erase disk and install Ubuntu here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave the radio button in there. If you do something else, this is more the advanced option, but we're going to leave it on the first option here. Now it'll tell you exactly what's going to happen, and that's okay. So we're going to go continue, and then it's going to ask you what location you're in. I'm in London, so I'm going to click continue here. Now you need to give it some details, which is your name or your username and some password information. Once we've done this, we can click continue, and I'll speed the installation process up after this point. So once you get all this set, you'll be able to go ahead and just follow along. And once this is all done, we can click continue. And what I will do is speed this process up. You'll be able to see it on the screen, but I'll speed it up. Otherwise, it does take a fair bit of time to get this installed onto a virtual machine. So let's go ahead and speed the process up for you. So the installation should be now done, and it will reboot, and you can now log into Ubuntu for the very first time. You'll then be offered a bunch of updates and stuff like that that you can do. So I'm just going to go ahead and click next and go through these and get the system set up. And once this is done, we'll have Ubuntu running on HyperV inside Windows 11, which will be great for tutorials and testing and other things like that. So if you want to get into virtual machines, then using HyperV is a good way of starting because it's free, and you can just install this on your operating system here. So you've got the software updater here. I'm going to skip all this, but you should now see a desktop here. And again, you can make this full screen and set it up how you like, use all the applications. As long as you've got enough memory to run the virtual machine, it should be pretty fast. If you want to delete it and remove it from your system, let me show you how to do that as well, so you know exactly how to install it and how to remove it. So I'm going to power off the system. Remember, you have to power these down because they are running, so you need to turn them off just like you would a normal computer. Once this is finally shut down here, we can now close this off here, and you should see the state of Ubuntu is now off. And what you can do if you want to delete it is go down to the bottom right hand side here and select delete, and it will remove the virtual machine from your system. So if you're looking at playing around with virtual machines, then HyperV is on your operating system right now to install. Pretty straightforward and easy to do. As you can see there, you can choose whatever distros you want to install, what versions of Linux you want to install, and test them out and have a play around with them. Anyway, my name has been Brian from briteccomputers.co.uk. Just want to say a big shout out to all my YouTube members who joined my YouTube members group. I really do appreciate the support, and I shall see you again for another video real soon. Bye for now.